The general paradigm, oh, I love that word. The general paradigm within the fitness industry at the moment, and especially when it comes to weight loss, is eat less of this food, eat none of this food, cut this food out, etc., etc. And I have a little bit of an issue with that because it's focusing a little bit too much on the foods that you should be eating, quote unquote, less of, without actually putting any focus into some of the foods which you should be eating more of. Because there are foods out there which, in order to make fat loss a little bit easier, you should actually be focusing on eating a hell of a lot more of. Let's take protein, for example. Now, we all know, well, we should all know, that the main concept behind fat loss and the main thing that you should be focusing on for fat loss is eating less calories relative to what you burn off. But protein actually comes in as the secondary objective for a lot of people when they're trying to lose weight, because eating more protein actually makes weight loss a hell of a lot easier. Not only is it very, very satisfying and satiating, meaning that it's going to fill you up for longer, meaning that you're going to be way less likely to overeat on foods throughout the day, but it's also got a very, very high thermic effect. Now, what a thermic effect is it's basically the amount of calories that it takes to eat, digest, store, absorb and utilize foods. Protein has the highest. Around 10 to 20% of the calories within the protein itself are instantly used just to eat the stuff. So let's say, for example, you have a pure protein item, which doesn't really exist, but let's just imagine it for the basis of this video. Let's imagine you've got a pure protein item which has 100 calories in it and you consume that. You're actually only going to be intaking around 80 of those calories because the extra 20 are used just to digest it, which means you burn them off instantly. So obviously based on that, you should be aware that if you eat more protein, you're going to be burning off more calories, meaning that your caloric expenditure is going to be a hell of a lot higher, which means that your calorie deficit can also be a hell of a lot higher. Now let's talk about highly nutritious food, so foods with a lot of nutrients in them and not as many calories in them. One of the worst things that I hear, especially the government say this, that you should be doing in order to lose fat is reduce your portion sizes, reduce the amount of food that you're eating. If you literally just did that, if you literally just reduce the amount of food that you're eating over the course of the day, so you halved your portion sizes, ate less food, you just result in being a hell of a lot more hungry. Granted, you might well be in that calorie deficit which you want to do, but you'll also be starving, which means that you're going to be a hell of a lot more miserable, you're going to be fatigued, you're going to be tired, you're going to be just hungry, a hungry, miserable mess. So instead of reducing your portion sizes, instead of reducing the amount of food that you're eating, you need to instead be increasing your portion sizes and increasing the amount of food that you're eating whilst keeping your calorie intake relatively low. This might seem like a little bit of a paradox and a little bit confusing to say the least, but it's not actually that difficult to understand. Let's say, for example, you have 200 grams of spaghetti bolognese and you've included 25% fat mince in there, meaning that it's a certain amount of calories. I don't know the exact amount of calories that it'd be, but let's say, for example, it's around 500-600 calories. If you simply just replaced that beef mince, that 25% beef mince, with 5% lean beef mince, you could actually add more of that to it, meaning that the spaghetti bolognese in and of itself could actually be more like 250 grams. And because you're using 5% mince, the amount of calories that you're intaking is going to be way less. It's going to be more like a 400 calorie meal instead, meaning you've increased the amount of food, you've increased the volume of that meal, but also reduced the calories down a little bit. Bonus points if you add more vegetables into it as well to increase the volume of food of that meal, but also still keeping those calories low. You're eating more protein because the beef mince is going to be more protein dense considering the amount of fat within it is reduced, and you're also eating more vegetables within that meal as well, meaning you're eating more food but keeping your calories low. This is a prime example of why it's not as clear cut as simply reducing the amount of food that you're eating, reducing your portion sizes, eating less of this, eating less of that. Instead of taking note of what all of these people are saying, stop focusing solely on the amount of foods that you should be eating less of, and instead put more focus into some of the foods that you should be eating more of. You're going to make your fat loss journey a hell of a lot easier if you do that, and you're also going to feel way less of a hungry, miserable mess, meaning you're actually going to be able to stick to it for a hell of a lot longer as well. Besides, if you literally just focus on reducing certain foods and not eating certain foods, you're kind of going to start developing a pretty toxic relationship with food in and of itself, and that's a slippery slope that you don't want to go down. So stop focusing entirely upon that and start focusing on eating more food whilst keeping within your calorie deficit. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like. If you've got any questions for me, comment below because I'd be more than happy to answer them for you. And if you want any more content exactly like this, then make sure that you're either following my Instagram at k.p_health or subscribe to my channel. Peace.